Eagles Nation, what's going on? Guess what, guys? The Eagles start training camp today at noon. I want to take a little time and let's go ahead and let's talk about our secondary heading into this training camp. All right, let's get to it. E-A-G-L-E-S, Eagles! All right, y'all. How about B-Doc leading us into our conversation today about the Eagles secondary?
The best team in football.
Welcome to the Gate City Sports Channel. Just because it's the second episode I've ever aired of this on this channel, guys, I'll give you a quick second spiel here. Grew up in Newcastle, Delaware, just outside of Philadelphia, moved to North Carolina, bought my house after college in Greensboro, still representing the Eagles down here in North Carolina. All right, guys. So, topic of interest today is the secondary. I want to go over why I think the secondary is going to be such a big thing this training camp. I don't think it's a secret, at least it's not a well-kept secret, that we struggled big time last season against the pass. And we all know when the pass rush failed us, we were in for a serious beatdown last season against teams.
Prescott throws. Cooper makes the play.
So, old Skippy boy likes to bring up the fact that last year, Dak Prescott was 68 of 90, which is a 75.6 completion percentage, which, let's be honest, it's because he was playing high school kids at some point in the secondary almost. 3 for 725 yards, had 4 touchdowns against 2 interceptions, and had a 104.2 QBR rating against the Eagles. So his quarterback rating against the Eagles was 104.2, which is the most revealing stat. When he was playing basically a decimated defense that the Eagles we were wielding out there.
Combined 24 of 28 was Dak Prescott in the 2 fourth quarters.
What he forgets to mention is 1 year prior with Dak Prescott against a legitimate Eagles defense. Okay, a defense that is probably going to seem somewhat similar to the defense we're going to throw out there this year. Yes, there's question marks at defensive line in terms of our ends. Defensive ends probably had a little more stable condition in 2017 with the defensive ends. But nonetheless, we're going to have similarities between that 2017 defense and this 2019 defense. Let's take a look at Dak Prescott's numbers in 2017 against our defense. 35 of 61 with a 57.4 completion percentage for 324 yards. Okay, he was 1 of 3, 1 touchdown to 3 interceptions, a 57% QBR. Okay, here's the most telling thing: he played 13 teams in 2018, right? And the Eagles ranked 7 out of 13 with his QBR ratings. Okay, slightly above the middle of the pack. We weren't as bad as it looks, but any of us who know the reality of it know it was really bad because of our injuries. But let's go back to 2017. Where did he stack up against a legitimate Eagles defense? 2. He had a second worst performance. And by the way, he had to play us twice and ranked second worst, only to his one stint he had to go against Seattle's defense. So, hey, Skip Bayless, stick that up your ass, buddy.
Gamesmanship going on right now.
Anyways, moving past Skip Bayless and his Eagle hating.
The Eagles are easily the most overrated NFL team.
Let's talk about training camp, man. Training camp is here, and we're going to see what this team's all about. So, one thing I did notice is I made my projection in my first video of my first projection. It's going to change, guys, but my first projection, who I thought would be on the 53-man roster, I was pretty heavy on defensive backs. I mean, I put 10 defensive backs on that roster, 6 coming out of the corner position, and 4 safeties. I still stand by that. I feel like unless there's a trade, that's probably going to be the reality, because the fact remains that we were only in our base defense 18% of snaps last season. That's 25th in the NFL. Okay. With our secondary as decimated as it was, we still played the nickel 61% of the time and the dime and dime plus 19% of the time. So 61% of the time, we were in the nickel. If you don't know what the nickel defense is, guys, I'll throw a little screen up here. Long story short, guys, a nickel defense just means basically you're running 5 defensive backs on the field. Its technical positional terms is, generally speaking, it's a 4-2-5. If you're in a 4-3 base defense, then you go to a 4-2-5 package. Outside of that, if you're in a 34 defense, then you would go to a 3-3-5 defense. That would be your package, 3-3-5 package. But 5 defensive backs are on the field. 61% of the time, that's where our defense was. We really liked having those two corners, the 2 outside corners with a slot corner in there, or with someone playing the inside. Okay, our 2 safeties over the top. I mean, that seems to be, to me, like, if you're going to project a roster, as much as some people are talking about being in that 12, being that base 12, that 12 package for our base offense coming up this upcoming year. Well, our defense is probably going to be just as heavily on the nickel, and I still have some doubts about us playing that 12 package as much as some people think. We're going to be in it more than other teams, but I don't think we're going to be in it 50% of the time. All right, so let's talk about who I think will be on this roster and who I think is going to be fighting in the secondary. I think the first guy up we have to talk about is the guy that we just received negative news about, just Ronald Darby, who's starting off on the PUP list, physically unable to perform. And Ronald Darby is probably our most known asset back there. And unfortunately, as good as Ronald Darby can be, especially, he's got a case of the butterfingers every now and then, but he's very good at pass defense. He's also very injury prone, which is not a good thing for us right now. We really could have used Ronald Darby being healthy, but some of the indications and things I read said that Ronald Darby would likely be back before the end of training camp and would probably a definite go by week 1. So if he gets enough time to actually get conditioning, the correct amount of conditioning. Past Ronald Darby, the next guy who is, major news piece right now is going to be Jalen Mills. And I think Jalen Mills is going to have to play with a chip on his shoulder, which, not saying a whole lot for Jalen Mills. A lot of you guys know that guy always seems to have a chip on his shoulder, but he's going to really have to play with a chip on his shoulder this year because he's going to be pressed heavily for his position. To be honest with you, I think Maddox is probably going to be that second corner. Maybe, when we got to have someone in the slot, covering us. I'm sorry, we have to have someone covering a slot receiver. So if a team goes heavy on that 11 package, they start doing things like that. Or if they go empty back set on us, like in a 0 package or something like that, then you could, I think you'll see Avonte Maddox will probably move in, and then you'd probably have Jalen Mills, Russell Douglas, or Sidney Jones would probably then move to the outside with Ronald Darby. The other thing I could also see might be a knock on Avonte Maddox would be taller receivers, red zone defense type things. His particular stature and height could be an issue down in the red zone. But other than that, to be honest with you, that guy, he did his thing last year. I mean, that kid came out, did not play like no rook. So Avonte Maddox, I would say, is probably going to be the star of training camp. I just feel, especially for the secondary, I feel like that guy he's going to show us something. Along with Avonte Maddox, another guy we'll probably see play inside quite a bit would be Cre'Von LeBlanc. I think he's the next guy we'll see play quite a bit on the inside. Cre'Von LeBlanc was a guy that I personally never heard of before last year, the end of last year. That's one of the things we can attribute to essentially Joe Douglas and his ability to really analyze players and just find out who's a real football player out there. And his personnel department did a great job pulling that kid out, and I think he's going to make this roster. I think he's that good, Cre'Von LeBlanc. Past Cre'Von LeBlanc, I think, is where we get kind of interesting with our bigger corners, which is, let's start with, Russell Douglas. Russell Douglas, while he's not a star or anything like that, like, the kid has definitely paced himself with improvement every single year. And last year was like a big step forward for him to where, like, I'm sorry, but there were points in the season where he was really the only dependable player we had on the corner position. And, you know, he's gone from looking lost out on the field to actually looking like a ball player. However, some of the rumor mills that are floating around there is that as much improvement and development has been there with Russell Douglas, for some weird reason the coaching staff is still way higher on Sidney Jones than they are Russell Douglas. Not to take anything away from Sidney Jones. I think Sidney Jones is a great football player as well. I think he's just got to get over the injury hump he's been on. But I heard that Russell Douglas could be trade bait. A lot of people are saying that. Me personally, I'd like to see Jalen Mills go before Russell Douglas. Nothing against Jalen Mills. I still think he's one of the better cornerbacks we have. I think if he's healthy, he's probably a starter without question. But giving these young guys the opportunity with him having that foot injury, man, if he's not 100%, he's going to be in for a fight for his positioning. But, you know, Jalen Mills, if I'm not mistaken, he's a free agent in 2020. So, me personally, I would like to see Russell Douglas get more of an opportunity and a chance because I think Russell Douglas probably costs us less money in the long run compared to someone like Jalen Mills, just to be honest. And then Sidney Jones is still an unknown commodity. All the ball skills are there for Sidney Jones. We know that the kid has the talent. He just, was out of place playing inside. He's got to be outside. And if he's going to be outside, that means he's going to have to show something that Avonte Maddox isn't shown, like down in the red zone. He's going to have to find himself a niche here. And he's going to have to out-compete someone like Jalen Mills because Jalen Mills has that similar height and weight makeup. So Sidney Jones is really going to have to show something this year. I think this is kind of a do-or-die situation for Sidney Jones. Like, he needs to show something this year. All right, guys, so I'm just going to give some predictions before these guys put the pads on this afternoon and start hitting, and we start finding out what's what. Here's my projection. Ronald Darby is going to start the season as the left corner. Our right corner will be Avonte Maddox and our base. We move out to the nickel. My prediction would be it'll be Ronald Darby, Jalen Mills, and then Avonte Maddox will be inside. I think Russell Douglas will be playing on certain downs for Avonte Maddox, especially like the red zone. And then he may fill in for Jalen Mills as a backup. And then Sidney Jones would be the primary backup to Ronald Darby. And then Cravon LeBlanc would be the extra guy that will bring in for that inside corner position. That's my projections. That's how I see it, is that base defense, Ronald Darby, Avonte Maddox, unless we're in the red zone. Then I would say Ronald Darby and Jalen Mills. And if Jalen Mills needs to sit for a little bit, I would say it would be Ronald Darby and Russell Douglas. And if Darby needs a spell, I would say that Sidney Jones would be the guy off the bench to spell Ronald Darby. And then, of course, in our nickel package, I would say that it's going to be Darby and Mills, left and right corner. Inside corner would be Avonte Maddox. And you got Cravon LeBlanc to kind of come in and spell Avonte Maddox when he needs to. One thing that should be said is that some of these guys are like Cravon LeBlanc. There's a few people who have stepped up and said, like, look, we want to take on kick returning responsibility, stuff like that. And they're trying to carve out those special roles. And I'm telling you, you want to go 6 deep at corner, you have to do stuff like that. And these guys are doing it. My projection, we're carrying 6 unless we trade out Sidney Jones, Russell Douglas, or Jalen Mills or something like that. We're going to carry 6 defensive backs. That's my projection. All right, guys. Tell me what I got wrong. Tell me what you think. Comment down below. And do 3 things for me if you could, because I'm new and I need a start. I need help. So if you could do me a favor, like the video. Comment below if you have a comment. And then last but not least, share the video with any of your friends or anyone who might want to stay informed in the Eagles situation and information and news. And subscribe, guys. I really need a subscription. Look in your bottom right. And in your bottom right-hand corner, you should see a subscription button there. It's a little watermark. It'll say subscribe, and it'll have a finger on it. All right, guys. This is Steve. I'm out. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. EAGLES, Eagles.
25-yard line. Look out. Prescott spins away. We have